They came from the void, not with guns or fire, but with light, an overwhelming, sacred light that cracked the sky like it was nothing but brittle glass. We didn't see ships. We didn't hear warnings. There was no grand invasion, just a shimmer in the upper atmosphere. And then, like a second sun being born, they arrived. I was 15 when the first one appeared over New Jakarta. The light hung there in the clouds, motionless and impossibly bright. People stopped what they were doing. Traffic halted. Markets stilled. Voices fell to whispers. At first, it felt like a miracle. That's how they get you. It doesn't start with fear. It starts with awe. Then the voice came, not through speakers or screens, but inside us. It wasn't words. It was emotion, memory, sensation. It told us we were chosen, that the long age of suffering had ended, that they had returned to guide us back to our true purpose. Some dropped to their knees right there in the streets. Others cried, clutching their heads as if something beautiful and terrible was pouring into their minds. My mother was one of them. She knelt beside me, tears streaming down her face. She kept whispering, "They're real. Oh God, they're real." I tried to pull her back, but she wouldn't move. She wasn't afraid. That's what broke me. She looked at the being, this impossible shape of light and motion hanging in the sky, and smiled like it was her savior. That's when I knew something was deeply, fundamentally wrong. I didn't kneel. I stood there, heart pounding, staring into that thing's brilliance until my eyes burned, and I felt it. Something slithering at the edge of my thoughts, trying to wrap around my will, soothing me, urging me to let go, to submit, to believe, but I couldn't. Maybe it was fear. Maybe it was defiance. Maybe I was just too stubborn. Whatever it was, it held me upright while the rest of the world knelt. I ran. I don't even remember where to. My feet moved before my brain caught up. I left my mother behind. And that's something I'll carry with me until the day I die. When I came back, she wasn't the same. Her eyes glowed faintly blue. She spoke less and less, ate only what she was given, prayed to something no one could see. When I asked her what they were, she said, "They are the ones who made us, but they didn't make me, and they didn't make what came next. The governments didn't resist. Not at first. Most world leaders were the first to kneel. The rest were removed, quietly, bloodlessly, erased from history like they had never mattered. The news called it the reunification. The gods had returned, they said, and mankind's golden age had begun. But I knew better. I'd seen the look in my mother's eyes. That wasn't salvation. It was surrender. The resistance wasn't born in a bunker. It didn't come screaming into life with rifles and explosives. It started quiet, invisible, in that suffocating silence between who we were and what they wanted us to become. It started in back alleys and broken rooftops, in stolen looks and silent nods among the few of us who didn't kneel. I joined the moment I saw a man set himself on fire in the middle of Unity Square. He walked calmly into the plaza, past the worshippers singing their endless hymns to the sky. He stood beneath the golden statue the gods had raised, an inhuman figure with 12 arms and no face. Then he poured accelerant over his head and struck a match. As flames consumed him, he screamed, "We are not theirs!" over and over until his voice was gone, until there was nothing left but ash and the echo of defiance. The gods didn't stop him. They just watched. That indifference struck something deep in me. I couldn't understand it at first. Wasn't this being supposed to be divine, all-knowing, loving? But it didn't grieve. It didn't flinch. It didn't even seem curious. It stood there, tall and luminous, utterly unmoved while a man burned himself alive to deny it. That was the day I stopped thinking of them as gods. Gods care. Monsters don't. The resistance found me the next day. Or maybe I found them. It's hard to say. All I remember is a scrap of paper pushed into my hand with an address and a time. No name, no symbols, just numbers. I went, in that crumbling room, deep beneath the old metro lines. I met people like me, angry, afraid, tired of pretending. That's where I first saw the Wake. It was a prototype then, cobbled together from stolen tech and old military hardware. Not a weapon in the traditional sense, but something far more dangerous, a jamming pulse. It targeted the signal the gods used to speak into our minds, disrupting the frequencies they hijacked inside human brains. The first time we used it, we were terrified it wouldn't work. We activated the pulse during a public blessing ceremony. What? They called the moments when divine light was beamed into the cities, reinforcing their control. Hundreds were gathered, eyes empty, swaying like reeds in a current. When the wake hit, it was like someone pulled the plug on the whole performance. People gasped, screamed. Some dropped to the ground, clutching their heads. Others ran. One man vomited and then started laughing hysterically, repeating, "I'm free, I'm free," like he'd just woken from a decades-long coma. And in that moment, I saw the truth. It wasn't belief that kept them loyal. It was invasion, neural, emotional, spiritual. A soft occupation of the soul. We had given them back their minds. Not all of them, but enough. And that was the first real blow we ever struck against the gods. Not with bullets, with freedom. They called me Ash. Not because I was fast or fierce, or some hotshot hero from an old-world action flick. They called me Ash because every time I plugged into the rig, I came back burnt, soul-scorched, mind-seared. I burned for them, and they watched me smolder. The neural harness wasn't made for humans. Not really. It was a direct mind-link combat platform, a relic of a darker time, built when war was fought through thought and will, banned by every civilized system across the colonies. But we weren't civilized anymore. We were past morals, past rules. We were losing, and desperation makes saints out of monsters. I volunteered. Not because I believed I'd survive, but because no one else would. The rig needed someone with a particular neurostructure. Turned out, mine was fractured just right, broken enough to take the strain. The machine didn't have a name. We called it the Gauntlet. It was nothing more than an exosuit, with a neural net that fused itself to my cortex in under 5 seconds. Once linked, the distinction between man and metal blurred. You didn't control it, you became it. They dropped me outside the ruins of old San Francisco. What had once been a city was now a vertical wound in reality. A god core had rooted there, a seed of divine architecture, blooming like a cancer of gravity and light. It didn't look like a building. It looked like madness, sculpted into stone. Towers looped into themselves. Roads floated like threads of silk. The air sang, constantly. Not music, something deeper, like it was rewriting the laws of sound to praise itself. I walked into that song and brought silence. For 6 hours, I fought. Not people, not soldiers. Echoes, proxies, beings made of data and light, programmed worship. They attacked in patterns I couldn't predict, like dreams wearing armor. But I adapted. The gauntlet was raw, feral code and rage. It let me see between pulses, anticipate the rhythm behind the chaos. I moved like a god among monsters, but every second inside that rig scraped something off my mind. Not just memories, meaning. I could feel it, slipping. By the time I reached the core, I was hollow. I didn't destroy it with a missile or blade. I just touched it, poured everything I had into a neural overload pulse, and watched the entire structure collapse in on itself, like a dying thought. When I came back, my eyes bled. My ears wouldn't stop ringing for 2 days. I slept for 3. When I woke up, there were faces around me, whispering, awed. They said I was a hero. They said I saved 10,000 minds from becoming divine property. They asked me what it felt like. I told them the truth. I don't know if I'm still human. And somewhere inside, a voice whispered that I wasn't. Not completely. Not anymore. It's been 15 years since the last god fell silent. Sometimes, it still feels like the echo of their presence lingers in the wind, like the hum of forgotten prayers, clinging to ruined cathedrals. Earth didn't return to what it was before. It couldn't. The scars are too deep. You can see them from orbit. The craters where Godkillers once pulsed with holy radiance. The cities bent and twisted by divine geometry. The wastelands where time itself still stutters and slips. But we're here. We're still here. And that means something. We are fewer now. The wars took millions. The conversions took more. Some didn't survive the wake. Others chose to follow their new gods into the void when the final call came. But those of us who remained, we earned this world. Not as subjects, not as worshippers, but as heirs to our own legacy. And we didn't rebuild it with marble and monuments. We didn't raise spires to the sky or etch prayers into steel. We built homes, farms, workshops, places for people, not for gods. Because we finally understood that salvation was never going to descend from the heavens. It had to be made by hand, with sweat and stubborn will. We don't sing like we used to, not in praise. Our songs now are rough and human, filled with sorrow and laughter, and the kind of beauty that isn't perfect. That's the difference. Before, our voices were shaped to please something beyond us. Now, we sing for ourselves. And in that dissonance, there's a kind of freedom that no divinity could ever offer. History remembers the gods as beings of light, of majesty, of overwhelming presence, but those who lived through it. We remember the cold, the emptiness behind the glow,